Let's go ahead and refresh you. Not showing them streaming. Refresh you. All right, we got Twitch up. We don't have YouTube up. Okay, this is interesting. Why isn't YouTube streaming it? What is going on? Refresh. My channel. There we go. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. Why isn't YouTube streaming it? Oh, let's call this number 5 instead. My channel. There we go. Okay. Okay, let me mute you. 5 instead. Okay, we'll give everyone like 5 minutes, and then we'll get started with some analysis here. Talk about the market because it's doing some crazy stuffs. Let me send out a link, tweet, so that everyone can see it. We are live. We are live. Boom. 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 That should be good. Right? Sweet. Okay. Yeah, so we'll get started at like 1:35 and then yeah. How's the volume? Is it before we get started? Is it low? Can you guys hear it okay? What pattern is Bitcoin still in? Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. So it's in a really interesting situation right now. I'll just wait for some more people to jump on, and then we'll start talking about it, so I don't have to repeat myself. Don't you record these anymore on Twitch? No, so the question comes from Twitch. Do I still post them on Twitch? Yeah, I do. I still post them on Twitch, but Twitch deletes them on a rolling basis. So it's like, I think it's like every 30 days or 45 days or something like that. They delete, the previous stream. But on YouTube, I have it cataloged. So if you want to see the recordings, it's there for the, there for the viewing. Not really sure what's going on with my trade view right now. All right, fuck it. Let's go ahead and start talking about it. I'm impatient. So let me clear this stuff off, because I've been playing a lot with Bollinger Bands lately, and I've got some interesting finds that I think everyone would appreciate. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about this this macro trend that we've been seeing. Let's get rid of Bollinger Bands too. So we're just going to look at price. So for those of you who read my my Bitcoin Magazine article, I talked about this parabolic curve that we've been in. And if you're looking at the 3-day candles here, you know, I'm not the only one that's been talking about this. So previously, I was discussing something like this, where we're in this linear ascent. Keep in mind, this is still log scale, but we're on this like linear path, and we're approaching the top of it. But it was something like that. So I'll draw the linear path for you guys. It was like, if you go from here and go straight down, you see this nice linear trend on Bitcoin, but it's kind of coming to a head now. You can see that it's like poking through the top a little bit. Depending on what exchanges you're looking at, it's already penetrated it. And then if you go on the bottom, you see the same thing here, you know. Basically something like that. Which puts us in a precarious situation. Everyone smash that like button now. Yeah, so this puts us in a precarious situation here, because we have two trends that we're testing right now. If you're looking at Bitstamp, it's like kind of testing it right now. But if you're looking at Bitfinex, it's not quite there. You know, it's in this weird area, because keep in mind, these are 3-day candles. So even though it looks like it's testing it right here, if we zoom in on like the 120-minute candles, I don't think it quite has us there yet. So if we look here on the 120-minute candles, it's like testing it as we speak. And since it's such a long trend, keep in mind that like this isn't a hard limit. This is more of a zone. So like anything above and below is going to be considered this line, because it just really depends on how you draw the line, right? So if we keep in mind this 3-day trend, and we zoom out, we see that parabolic trends aren't terribly unfamiliar to Bitcoin, right? So we can actually sketch this out a couple different times and throughout its history. If we look at this curve right here, we see that it kind of abided by this parabolic curve here in terms of its path back down to the bottom. You know, slight parabolic curve here, something like that. And we see it on the lower support. Oops, that's not what I want. I mean, then we see it on the support as well. So we see like this nice continuation of this parabolic trend here. That if you drew it up here, yeah, you see these outliers here, but for the most part, the meat of the trend is pretty well contained within this you know, you can call it a parabolic envelope. Or parabolic trend line, you know, whatever you want to call it, but it's been really nicely contained within you know, that trend line there. So you see that Bitcoin kind of goes to these phases of parabolic rises and demises, right? Not demises, that sounds a little pessimistic, but you know, you can see it. And then if we go on the 1-day here and zoom over, let's just go through a brief history of parabolic curves with Bitcoin, so we can understand what we might be up against in the future. So once again, we see a parabolic growth curve. This one's a little bit more aggressive. Probably better off right there. So this is this is another one that had a parabolic envelope here before it ultimately broke down. And you see the support and resistance is very well confined within this little envelope here, right? And then we can do this again here as well. This one's a little bit more aggressive too, but it's parabolic nonetheless. It goes like this. Probably better off to draw it like right here and go here. So you see that, if we zoom out, Bitcoin does this sort of thing where it goes like parabolic and then it kind of tapers down and then it goes parabolic. So let me draw one more envelope here. So it goes down, So one thing we can take away from this is that as we see the decline is not as aggressive as the entrance into the envelope here. This one doesn't really have a well-confined lower boundary here. And we can do this over and over again throughout its history. Even here, even when it's like in the dollar values here. Oops. So let's go ahead and draw all these out so we can just look at them all and get a good historical view of Bitcoin over the years. Something like that. Oops, let's go here. Go here. These are rough fits, but they're parabolic nonetheless. So it's important to keep in mind that like not only is this parabolic, it's parabolic on a log scale. So let's go ahead and zoom out here and let's look at the history of this. Okay, so we can see historically, let's go ahead and zoom in here. So let's call this parabola 1. Let's call this P1. We got P1 here, right? So parabola 1, we said it had a very exponential growth, went damn near vertical, and then it broke, and then it kind of went like sideways before finding a bottom here, right? And then parabola 2, we'll call this parabola 2 here, same sort of story. So it rises, it goes damn near vertical, can't quite keep up the momentum, it pulls back, and then it goes slightly sideways before picking up a new trend again. We'll call this parabola 3 here. So parabola 3, it goes vertical, can't quite keep up the growth, it pops, and then it goes a little bit sideways, and then it finds another parabolic decline, which puts us in our current parabola, which we'll call parabola 4 here. And this is the big daddy parabola, which would be parabola 4, right? So we see, just based off of the previous trends, if we zoom out and put them into perspective here, let's pull this right here. And let's actually get rid of these guys. So we'll get rid of you and get rid of you. So we see that this happens over and over again throughout the life of this, which is great if you're an investor, because you see an asset with a repeatable pattern. It's going to be a tradable event, right? So we see, it goes up and oops, it pops and goes a little bit sideways. It goes up, it pops, goes a little bit sideways, goes up, it pops, goes a little bit sideways, and now we entered this nice accumulation zone, which has sent us into our current parabola, right? And it's been a very aggressive parabola, but I don't think it has much more growth in it. I think at most we'll see 10K, and that's at most. I expect it to top out right at the upper edge of this envelope right here. So this would have us at like 8 to 9K. So something like 8,000 to $9,000, somewhere in there. This is the absolute maximum I am anticipating seeing it going, because you see that it's abided by this parabolic envelope and it has not deviated from this trend for 2 years. It has been in this trend for 2 years. Okay, so this is October of, wait, is that 2 years? Am I an idiot? Yeah, October of 2015 right here is when it first started, and now we're in November of 2017. So two year long parabolic growth, and it's coming to a head because it's going, like I said before, damn near vertical on a log scale. So this is very aggressive price growth. So we can expect a pullback, and then a tapering down before the next accumulation zone. Okay. So let's see here. If we look at the retracements, the historical retracements, we can start to develop price target sets for these parabolic pops. if we look at, let's go through all these so we can just have a nice background here. Oop, that's not what I want. Let's go to, where the hell is it? Oh, fib retracement. So we got the first one. We see it pop down to 78. It settled around 50. Let's leave you here. We see the second one goes up to here, pops down to 78, and it settles around 50 to 61 before continuing downward. Once more. This one not as aggressive, but again, it settled around 50, and then it continued downward. And now that puts us right here in the position we're in now, where if we call this the bottom of the parabola, and let's say it does go to 8K. Let's say it actually does reach the upper boundary here, something like that. We can expect a pullback. It seems aggressive price-wise because we're seeing these crazy numbers, right? We're seeing it's up at 7,800, 7,200 currently, 7,270, and people are seeing these numeric growths. But what they're not taking into account is that as we're growing in price, the actual percentage growth is slowing down, and so that's what makes these parabolas so aggressive in terms of price correction, because it becomes as the slope of this parabola increases, right? The upper and lower bound increase, the slope increases. This puts very harsh requirements on the trend to maintain this percentage growth, right? And so eventually the market, no market is sustainably going to go vertical, but we can expect that when this does correct, wherever this upper price limit is, that we can see a pullback to 61, and most likely we'll see a pullback to tagging the 61, coming back to the 50, pinging around here before continuing a nice gradual resumption of downtrend and then a new accumulation phase, right? So this is just the parabolic envelope that we're talking about here, right? And keep in mind that this is, again, I can't stress this enough, that this has been a 2-year-long trend. So a test of this lower parabola is going to really send a message to investors and traders that, if they see a deviation of this parabola, right? This will be the first time it's broken this trend in 2 years, right? I find it very unlikely that a puncturing of this parabola I find it very unlikely that a move below this bottom support curve, this guy right here, would not result in what has historically been a 50 to 61% correction and then a resumption of a downtrend before an accumulation phase is come into play here. And we've seen it just happen. Again, seen it happen over and over again throughout the life of Bitcoin. So it only makes sense that it would happen again. That doesn't, I think a lot of people have this misconception about what a correction actually is. And a lot of people think that just because you're having a correction and that means that, oh, crypto's dead, Bitcoin's dead. And no, Bitcoin wants these corrections. And as an investor, if you can time these corrections, this can be very profitable. So as parabolic curves are seen throughout the market, just because it pops this parabolic curve doesn't mean that it's going to zero. It doesn't mean that crypto's dead. It just means that crypto is starting, or Bitcoin, I'm calling Bitcoin equal to crypto because it's it's the market index of crypto, right? For the most part, it has the highest market cap. But as Bitcoin goes through these phases, this is actually a good sign, in my opinion, that it's starting to behave like a predictable asset, and it's starting to behave like an asset that institutional investors want to see. And so this brings new money onto the playing field, and so during the next accumulation phase, we can expect this thing to go, we can make some market calls based on fib extensions here, but we can expect to see a pretty sizable hike on the next price growth. If we go through the next accumulation phase post parabola, we can expect this thing to go up to, let's see what the fib extension's like. So fib extension from here to here. What is this? This is a 420% fib extension. We see a fib extension here. We go down to here. That would have us at 30K. That would have us at $30,000 per Bitcoin, right? And if we move this down to here, What did this do? Again, you know, where's the 100? I'm losing it. There we go. You know, we're seeing these crazy fib extensions, but you know, we could see the next accumulation phase could push us to $30,000 to $40,000, maybe even $50,000 per Bitcoin. And that's not out of the question, considering, you know, these large guys are starting to create, you know, futures and options markets that are available to the layman, and it's just getting a large set of eyes onto Bitcoin, and it's very bullish. You know, just because we're setting up for a correction doesn't mean we're not bullish Bitcoin. Like long term, these are very bullish events. Like, don't get it twisted. Okay, so I just beat you over the head with a lot of rambling. Let's go through some questions here. Oh, you guys were very active. Okay, let's see. Pull back this weekend. Okay, blah blah blah. The banana, yeah. Josh Olszewicz, the banana. It's called pump and dump. I don't think Bitcoin's going through a bump and dump. I think it's just going through its normal cycle. How did you set your Bollinger Bands 20 in length and 2.4 in standard deviation? Okay, I'll talk about Bollinger Bands in a second. I just wanted to really drill home the importance of this parabolic curve throughout the life of Bitcoin and what the implications can mean before we actually go through market strategy for identifying a potential top or potential bottom. Okay. Why no Wyckoff? What happened? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Wyckoff as well. This falls all in line with the Wyckoff distribution pattern. But we're not calling them Wyckoff distribution patterns anymore, are we? We're calling them Schmidt distribution patterns, since I don't have a degree and since they got really butthurt last time I talked about it. Okay. But Satoshi Light said, if Bitcoin drops, Litecoin becomes king. Yeah, well, Satoshi Light says a lot of things. Bitcoin, Schmitcoin. What makes you so sure that the 8 to 9K is, okay, this is a great question. What makes you so sure that 8 to 9K is the top of the parabola? Why can't it touch it, pull back, and head vertical again? Okay, so let's go more in depth with this curve. Like, not even looking at other indicators. Let's just look at the history of price trend with Bitcoin here. So let's get some horizontal lines going here. Okay. So if we look at the history of Bitcoin, right, on this current price trend, so we see it makes these points all here, right? And we see the points right here, right? But they aren't random, okay? They have specific like checkpoints throughout the market where it says, okay, we're going to touch the top, we're going to go back down, we're going to reach a support level, and then we're going to continue upward. Okay, so if we look here. Let's do a trend line. So let's just do a little thought experiment here. Okay, so every time we make a point on the upper curve of the banana, let's draw a horizontal line. Okay, and we'll just draw it to the curve, and we'll do this for every single one here. Okay, every single one. Okay, so what do we see here? We see, and then we'll just do a hypothetical one right here, right? And let's go ahead and extend this upward just a little bit, so we can just say, you know, future growth. And we'll do the same thing here. Something like that. Okay, so if we look at the history of price trend with Bitcoin, we see that every time it's made a new top, the next top retraces to the previous top, right? So we see a new high here, okay, boom, it goes down, and then this is really when the parabola really starts forming, okay? So we see a new high here. Before this continues up to the next all-time high, it retraces down to this guy, right? Then it continues upward, you know, tests it again, doesn't really matter. Okay, so then we see here, we see a new all-time high made here. It retests this. We see a new all-time high made here. it retests this. Okay, then it comes up here again. It makes a new all-time high, tests the bottom of the parabola, it breaks through, makes a new all-time high, and it tests the bottom of the parabola and the trend line. Okay, well now we're in this situation right here where we're about to touch the upper boundary of the trend line and we don't know what's going to happen. Historically, that means that it's going to come and retest this purple line. But unfortunately, in our case here, that has us well outside this parabolic curve. So you can imagine that, like, as the price continues to go upward and this correction trend is seen throughout the market, it's going to become harder and harder to maintain the trend while doing the corrections and the price growth trend as well. So what I think is going to happen is I think this is going to be our last high. It's going to come down, and as it goes to retest, this previous high, you know, that's when it's going to start breaking down, is right in here. You know, it's done this over and over again. Every time it makes a new high, it comes back down. Every time it makes a new high, it comes back down. I guess you could argue, okay, playing devil's advocate here, you could argue that it makes a new high, it comes back down to here, it goes up here, right? And it comes back down here. But that doesn't fit the profile of how Bitcoin has done its retracements. So if we take into account the retracement patterns that we've seen with every correction, right? So we go here and we see a 50% retracement. Okay, let's do another one. Here to here, 50 to 61% retracement. We go from here to here. Okay, this is where I start to lose my confidence in its ability to ping off the bottom here, because Bitcoin loves to make 50 to 61%, you know, somewhere in here, these little zones, 50 to 61% retracements, 50 to 61% retracement, and once more 50 to 61% retracement. Unfortunately, in our case, 50 to 61% lies outside the parabolic curve, right in here. So in order to maintain the previous trend of 50 to 61% retracements, it would have us outside the actual trend. So, you know, just playing the odds here, it just doesn't seem likely that it would bounce off, that it would actually correct and then come down to 50% retracement and then continue upward. It just doesn't seem likely because it hasn't historically done that. 3,000 never tested 1,300 though, a black swan event. Okay, 3,000 never tested 13. What? You're talking about this? Yeah, that's fine. It's more relevant to look at the retracement trend. You know, not necessarily the dollar value trend. This is just an added trend that we've noticed, but in general, the corrections always go to 50 to 61% every time. Okay, we can do this over and over again, right? So start here. You see a 50 to 61% retracement. Let's do this one. From here to here, we see a 50 to 61% retracement. And we can go from here to here. Again, 50 to 61% retracements. Every time it makes a new all-time high, it retraces 50 to 61% of the previous low. And that even works on, I mean, that's what we discussed at the beginning of the stream, right? That works on the macro scale. Like, that's, even these retracements were 50 to 61%. It's just what it's been doing, right? This view is starting to suck, isn't it? Anyway, I talked about it earlier in the stream. So that little trend that Bitcoin loves to do is why I don't have confidence in a resumption of an uptrend upon the next correction. It doesn't seem likely, because that has us well outside the parabolic envelope, which historically over the last 3 parabolic envelopes we've seen has sent us into a sustained downtrend, which ultimately leads to an accumulation phase. Okay, so let's talk about some questions here. So what happens? I don't know if you guys can hear that guy upstairs, but he's like stomping around like an asshole. I'm not really sure what's going on. why is there only 13 likes? Smash that like. This guy's like my like evangelist. Okay. William DS. This is the Wyckoff Ferry. You call Bollinger 3 times tonight. We're gonna retrace 50. Okay. Okay, the reason I think Ripple has a lot of potential is because it is controlled. Okay, not really relevant. Do you see a shorter accumulation phase from historical charts or accumulation getting longer? Honestly, guys, I don't like to think about market phases in terms of time. I like to think about them in terms of price objectives within the confines of a trend. So indirectly, I'm tracking time, but I'm tracking price trend. So you can kind of imagine that, like, this little banana, as Josh was saying, this banana, right? We'll color it yellow. Color it yellow just for Josh. The banana in here, right? It's got a little stem. That I don't like to think about the time because that's not as relevant to me as the price objectives within a macro trend. I find that to be more useful for my trading. You know, personal preference, to each their own. But you can imagine that if you have a macro trend and you have price objectives within that macro trend, that inherently creates a time restriction on the price activity, right? It's like an indirect time association with the price growth. All right, question from Twitch. I'm trying to get into this whole cryptocurrency trading world. Do you think Ripple is a good investment? Okay, I'll talk about Ripple in a minute. Can you make an ETH chart? Yeah, let me finish talking about Bitcoin first. Do you think money will flow from Bitcoin to Ether during the correction, or Ether follows Bitcoin down? Okay, so we've got a few things people are talking about, right? So people want to know, if this Bitcoin correction happens, what happens to the other coins, and what is the time frame we can expect? Okay, time frame, I don't really have an answer. I mean, you can, based on this parabolic trend, you can kind of guess that it would happen somewhere in between. Let's see. Let's make this 1 day so it's a little more precise. You can kind of imagine the fuck. What is going on right now? Oh, I turned off my numlock.
Were you a jork for Halloween asking for a friend?
I lost that. That broke my concentration there for a second. Who just tipped me? Who was that? Oh, Dan. Classic tipper. Dan's a guy from my Discord channel. He's an OG viewer from the stream. So you can imagine that if it's got this time restriction on it, that, you know, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. You know, like at most. Typically corrections are pretty fast, so I would imagine like 10 days, just based on, you know, if we do this right here. So we see here that there's like a 10-day. Again, I don't like to make time predictions, so I'm not really keen on doing this right now. So we can see that this width right here. Oops. So we can see that this width, right her. What the hell? Go black. That this width is 10 days worth of price activity. These are 1 day candles. That, you know, I give it, like, I think it's gonna ping this upper line, and then ultimately come down. And so, you know, I'm pulling this completely out of my ass, guys. I don't think there's any way to reliably track days of predicted downtime, because, you know, it could be something like this, it could be something like this, you know, it could be something like this. Like, we don't know what a response to this upper trend line will be, so we don't know what that's going to be. So but I would say I would give it at most 10 days to reach this lower parabola, at most. I could be wrong, you know, it's entirely possible. This thing could go here, it could consolidate, make a nice little bull pennant, and then go up here, and then everyone is happy and Charlie Lee cries, because Litecoin is not the supreme coin. There's 80 of us in here. How many likes? This dude is evangelizing my like buttons. Kudos to him though. He's got 29, so good for you. And then there's that one guy who downvotes. You know what? I empathize with you, man. I'm also a fan of counterculture, so I support your decision to downvote my stream. It's probably not that good anyway. Is it healthy that we are in a vertical as fuck on the uptrend? So, I mean, define healthy. I mean, healthy in terms of like price activity. I mean, it's historically predictable, so I say that's healthy. It's not erratic. Makes sense. You devote your life to learn the trends of Bitcoin when in reality it could hit $0 tomorrow. Little kids who invested $100 7 years ago are millionaires. You might as well just keep your Bitcoin and go to work and watch it grow. Well, Prince Harry, I prefer not to work in a cubicle my whole life, and I'd rather make sense of the market and make money while doing it. So to each their own. We're gonna have to agree to disagree. Wyckoff Institute downvoted. Okay. So let's pull on the reins here, and let's actually start looking at let's look at this trend within the context of, let's get rid of you, and get rid of you. Okay, so let's get volume. Let's get volume in here. Merge it up. Okay, so we have volume, and let's go ahead and look at okay, let's start labeling some shit like we know what we're talking about here. Okay, so if we're looking at the Wyckoff distribution, right? I'm sorry, I've misspoken. The Schmidt distribution. If we look at the Schmidt distribution, right, we can look at this a couple of different ways, right? We can look at this from a 120-minute view, which is something like this, and then we can look at it from a macro view. Let's go ahead and look at this current view, and then we'll look at the macro view here. Okay, so textbook price objectives of the Schmidt distribution, right? It includes a buying climax. So let's call this your BC. Actually, let's write this in here so we can have it on the chart. So we have our buying climax right here. So let's do buying climax. Let's get rid of text wrap. Buying climax. Okay, so we have buying climax right here. Then we have an automatic reaction. Right? So automatic reaction right here. Nope, get out of here. And then we have a secondary test, which is going to be this guy. Secondary test, which is going to be this guy right here. Something like that. God damn it, get out of here. And then we have, if you talk to the Wyckoff Institute, they don't want to call this a sign of weakness, but here on the Schmidt distribution, I'm going to call this a sign of weakness because that's what the charts that I've learned have said, and in terms of nomenclature, that's what I am going to keep consistent. Okay, so sign of weakness. Then this is where it starts getting interesting, right? So we see the upthrust right here. Then we see another sign of weakness right here. And then we entered, you know, I'm going to call this almost a fake out. It entered what looked like to be a last point of supply, right? So let's say fake out of last point of supply. And this is really important. Let's make this all caps here. Fake out of last point of supply. This is this part right here. I'm calling this a fake out because if you guys follow whale calls, someone got liquidated for the largest OKCoin futures in history right here, right in here. So they got faked out by this last point of supply, and it was something like a $48 million position size got liquidated. So they got faked out by this last point of supply. There's a lot of theories going on about that, but we see here that this upthrust, we're now in this phase, which is called, let's call this right here. This is now called upthrust after distribution. Sometimes called like that, right? You might see it on charts written like that, but that's where we are right here. This whole thing. Can I draw on this brush? This whole thing is the upthrust after distribution. So I'm inclined to argue, some might disagree, that we are in a very exaggerated Wyckoff distribution on a micro scale that will translate, I'm about to argue for you guys, that it will translate to a higher time scale here in a second, so just hang tight. Okay. Traditionally, upthrusts after distribution, if you're looking at traditional examples of Wyckoff distributions, typically you see the upthrust, the upthrust after distribution rather, go up to something, just like a little bit above the upthrust. It's basically the goal of the upthrust after distribution is to fake the market into a resumption of an uptrend before continuing downward, right? So it would like stop out all the shorters that are up in here, get them to close their positions via market buy so that it creates liquidity for the big guys to short into, right? But given that this is cryptocurrency and everything is exaggerated, all the patterns are accelerated, right? Cup and handles no longer take 4 to 6 weeks. Head and shoulders no longer take 4 weeks. These things happen in the course of a day. Like these traditionally long-term patterns are taking place in very short periods of time because the market is open 24/7. So you get these really insane exaggerations of trend. And I'm inclined to argue that that's what's going on. Oh, my dog is barking. So... oh my God. Hold on a second. Sorry guys, my dogs are on the back porch and they decided to bark at some dude that's walking by the pool. Welcome to my life. Okay. So I'm inclined to argue, wait, where'd it go? Okay, so I'm inclined to argue that this is a very exaggerated upthrust after distribution that doesn't look like a typical one because this is cryptocurrency and things are exaggerated, things are accelerated. We have relatively low market caps, and so you see these sort of things that like don't traditionally look like head and shoulders, don't traditionally look like double tops, and you get the same effect. But if you look at it through the right lens, it actually makes sense. Right, and I think that's what's going on here. And I'm going to place an argument, and you guys can accept it or deny it. But I'm going to place an argument for you guys as to why this whole thing right here, is actually a macro upthrust of a macro distribution phase. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that. Before I do that, I'm going to go and answer some questions here. Damn, sounds like you have wolves at your crib. Well, I have an Australian cattle dog, and she's a glorified dingo, so she's kind of a wolf. How did you gain all this knowledge? Through a formal education, or did you self-educate yourself on this? Seems like a lot of information. The internet, dude. The internet is it's a hell of a drug. I taught all myself this stuff. I mean, I didn't like just raw teach myself this stuff, but like through the various people I follow on YouTube, like John Bollinger's been really big. The person who introduced me to Wyckoff patterns was John Bollinger. He started talking about it months ago, and I got really obsessed with it. And here I am today, still talking about it. So let's look at the let's look at some questions here. Okay. Oh, I got a couple subscribers on Twitch. Thanks, guys. For some reason, those aren't popping up, and I need to look into why that's not popping up. Okay, so let's look at this macro pattern here. Let's place an argument as to okay. Let's put it into context, right? 120 minutes. So if we look at if we look at the current trend on the 100, let's recontextualize this real quick. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the chart. So this was the Wyckoff, the Schmidt distribution that I was arguing. You know, buying climax, secondary test, up thrust, sign of weakness, blah blah blah. That's all this stuff right here, right? So let's go ahead and zoom out and put it into context of the larger picture, right? So that's us right here. I'll go ahead and circle it so we don't lose track. That's us right here. Okay, so as we zoom out, we see some interesting stuff, right? This starts to look like it's like a fractal version of the larger picture. So if we see a striking resemblance to the larger picture. Okay, so we see an up thrust right here, which can be argued that this is actually the up thrust. This whole thing is the up thrust. And I'm going to put this on day candles so it looks a little bit cleaner. So let's go 1 day. Okay, and there's our Schmidt distribution phase right there, so we didn't lose track of it. Okay, let's go ahead and look right. Let's put it on 12-hour candles rather. Okay, 12-hour candles. All right, so if we put this into perspective, this little guy, it looks a lot like, this looks a lot like this, right? So we would have our preliminary supply phase right here. We would have our, let's go ahead and let's put it on the chart. So we have our preliminary supply phase right here, PSY. We have our buying climax, right? We have our secondary test. We have our first sign of weakness right here. So this whole thing would be the buying climax. This would be the automatic reaction right here. Our AR will be right there. This would be our sign of weakness. This would be our secondary test, our ST, and this whole thing is going to be our up thrust right here. Okay, and what I'm about to show you guys may or may not convince you or not convince you, right? So if we look at this within the context of the parabolic envelope, right? Let's zoom out again and let's look at the history of the parabolic envelope. Historically, whenever Bitcoin breaks its parabolic envelope, it pops, it goes down, it goes sideways, and then it continues the downtrend, right? Okay, so this looks a lot like the last point of supply, right? We see the sign of weakness, we see an attempt to resume the uptrend, but rather this is a bull trap. We see the last point of supply, and then we continue downward down the path to the accumulation phase down here. Okay, so we can deduce from this that right now we are seeing a macro up thrust. So this would be the up thrust right here. Boom. Right? Which would put a popping of this up thrust down testing here. Let's just go ahead and forecast some stuff. Actually, let's put the 50% retracement on there. So we see from here to, let's see, let's theorize it goes all the way there, right? So if we pop this, it would have us dipping down into, not sustained, but dipping down below the 61%, because it likes to test below the secondary test. So it dips below, comes back up, has a bull trap, maybe retraces here, stabilizes, and then this is going to be our last point of supply, and then it continues the downtrend, which this matches perfectly with the way all of the previous parabolic envelopes have popped. It's like spot on. So, that was my weekly rant about the Schmidt distribution phase. That was your update. A lot of people are asking, since I haven't been talking about it lately, just because I try not to beat you guys over the head with the same shit all the time. But I'm inclined to argue that it's the same, you know, I don't see it being violated. I just see it being stretched to a more extreme version because this is crypto and crypto doesn't give a shit about you, right? All right, let's look at some questions here. Unless Bitcoin remains the next, okay. Let's look at any questions from Twitch. Do you trade Forex? I trade Forex sometimes when I'm really bored, but crypto has just been too exciting. And I've been really trying to prepare for, I've been really trying to sharpen up my my Bollinger Band knowledge, because I think it's gonna be really crucial on the play, to play the top and to play the subsequent correction phase. So I've been really trying to focus a lot of my attention on learning Bollinger Band reversal patterns, Bollinger Band, you know, just Bollinger Band trends. I'm really trying to go like balls deep in Bollinger Bands because I want to really time this well and just play a large macro play on the way down. So I haven't been really focusing on a whole lot other than just like studying and trying to sharpen my skills. Likely scenarios, correction happening after the fork, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, that's seems to be what a lot of people think, and it would line up with the way this parabolic curve is positioned. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the correction post-fork. Also wouldn't be surprised to see a correction pre-fork, just so people can say, you know, this is the 18th fork we've seen in the last month has been, this one's been a really politically driven one, and we've seen a lot of like heated arguments about it. So I would not be surprised to see, you know, everyone's saying the correction's gonna happen post fork. Would not be surprised to see it happen pre fork, just because fuck you. That's why, you know, Bitcoin likes to do that a lot. You know, it likes to rise on blatant bearish divergence. It likes to do a lot of things that the layman says, okay, this is the top, and then it squeezes out one more punch, and then people say, oh, this is the new paradigm, and then it suddenly reverses. So I would not be at all surprised to see a reversal happen pre-fork. That being said, you know, a lot of people are calling post-fork. I don't really care either way. I'm just keeping my eye on the macro pattern, so take it for what you will. I don't like to trade based on timelines. So, and also we see, if we look at the 4-hour pattern here, we see that you know, we're seeing sustained volume, but it's like if we look at this idea of like effort versus result, which Wyckoff, I hope I can mention the word Wyckoff without getting yelled at, but if we look at the effort versus result here, we see that a lot of volume is entering the market and not a lot of price growth. So this idea of like it's taking a lot of effort to push the price up just a little smidge. The price is going up, but what we need to look at is the price growth contextualized with the volume, and we can see here that the volume is pushing the moving average up. You can see it right here, this little blue line. So we're seeing a large increase in volume, but these little price growths are, you know, are pseudo incremental, and you know, it's starting to slow down. People are trying to call the top, and there will be fuckery afoot for sure. How long can a possible accumulation period last? So if you look at the last accumulation phase, which is right here, it lasted almost a year, almost right up on a year. This was the last accumulation phase right in here. You know, so it could take almost a year. Are you selling pre-fork? No, I'm currently holding nothing right now. Yeah, because I'm trading on Kraken and I'm trading with leverage, and they don't have stop losses. I don't trust Kraken, and I don't trust the market to continue to go up. Like the risk to reward here just isn't in my favor to go long from here to here. You know, this is like marginal gains for a large risk. So I'm sitting out until I confirm a macro reversal. So I'm not trading. I'm sidelined. I'm not trading anything. Okay, so let's talk about. Well, I'll let you guys decide. What do you guys want to talk about? Do you guys want to talk about other coins? You want to talk about my Bollinger Band strategies that I've been working on? You know, I'll let you guys lead the charge on that, since I just rattled off a lot of Bitcoin stuff. What do you guys want to talk about? Band strat would be cool. We can talk about Bollinger Band strategy. Okay, so this guy says, just got in. What do you expect the macro? I don't think I actually talked about this. What do I expect the macro accumulation bottom to be? So this is gonna be a hard one to tell, but just going off prior distribution phases, I would expect it to be around the 78% retracement line. That's historically been a, well, actually this one, I guess if we start it right here, yeah, this one almost did 100% retracement. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would expect the macro bottom to be somewhere between the 61 to 78% retracement before continuing upward. So that would put us right around, you know, 18, peaking below 1800, something like that. That would be my guess. But there's no telling. I mean, like, we've never, like, this price growth is insane. So who knows? Why don't you take a position? You aren't sure enough? Well, I'm not going to start shorting yet because I don't think, I mean, it could totally keep going upward, you know? So I'd rather just try to time the top a little closer. But also, I think going long, if you're not in a position right now, I wouldn't go. Personally, I don't think the risk to reward, and I'm speaking leverage here. I'm not talking about unleveraged. If you're unleveraged, it's a totally different conversation. But if you're leveraged right now, the risk to reward for going long right now, in my opinion, isn't there. Especially if you're not staring at charts all day and you don't have the ability to set stop losses. If you don't have the ability to set stop losses, you're just asking to get just riggedy wrecked with this correction. Can you tell us about any instances where your analysis might have burned you and the reason was? Oh yeah, I mean, analysis is wrong all the time, right? Like, no technical analysis is going to be right 100% of the time, but what you hope is if, you know, you're a good enough analyst that your TA is and your market calls are more than 50% accurate, right? So yeah, of course, I've made bad trades. I've misread the market tons of times. And anyone who tells you they haven't misread the market is just full of shit. Like, that's just not true. You know, I was listening to put things into perspective, I was listening to a lecture by John Bollinger last night. And he was saying a good trading system is one that is right 55% of the time. A very good trading system is one that's right 65% of the time. And if that's what John Bollinger considers to be a good trading system, I'm in good company, in my opinion. Okay, so this is a good question from Twitch. Bitcoin has gone on this recent rise mostly solo. Do you think a post-fork Bitcoin correction increase? Okay, this is a really great topic. So the question is, what happens if Bitcoin corrects? What happens to the alts? And what happens to, well, that's the question, right? What happens to the alts? So let's take the high market cap alts like Ether, Bitcoin, for example. It's a great one. I think I have it right here. Let's go ahead and clean this up too. So let's go here, get rid of the Bollinger Bands, get rid of this, this, and this. Okay, so right now, this is the Ether Bitcoin trend. So I'm going to answer your question with an observation. Okay, so actually let's get volume in here. And I don't know why I cleared this off. Let's get the 50 and the 200 EMA. Let's go back to the 1 day. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term death cross or golden cross, these are going to be your friends for these macro alt trends. And I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but so be it. Okay, so a golden cross is going to be something like this, where on a macro scale it can be 1 day, 12 hour, 6 hour, depends on how you like to trade. This is going to be considered a golden cross. Golden cross, where the 50 EMA crosses the 200 EMA, and it sustains this like upward market. This signals the beginning of a the beginning of a bull market, and vice versa. This right here is called a death cross. Death. Oops, my handwriting is dog shit right now. Death cross. And this signals the end of a bull market and the entrance of a bear market. Some important characteristics, some important traits. I don't know why I can't say that word. I feel like I'm saying it right and I'm just being an idiot. Some important traits to keep in mind is that when you're looking at just the EMAs, slope is key. So if you see a positive slope on both these guys, this signals a macro healthy uptrend. And as you see the slope start to turn down on the 50, this starts to signal bullish exhaustion and the beginning of a downtrend that could lead to a bear market, right? So we see here that the 50 EMA started to slope out. The 200 was still positive, but the slope was 0, right? So M equals 0. And then it starts to turn down, which ultimately crosses here. So typically, going long on the Ether Bitcoin ratio, right? Going long before you see a golden cross would be considered counter trend trading, and the risk to reward is not in your favor, right? And as of now, we see the slope being very heavily downward, which leads me to believe that there's much more downside to the Ether Bitcoin market in the future. And if you look at the other pairs, we see the same thing, right? So if you look at something like, let's look at like Neo Bitcoin, right? So now we see the sloping of, the downward slope, right? So we see this downward slope of the 50 EMA. We see the slope approaching 0, M equals 0 for the 200 EMA. And most importantly, this is the most important part, is that Neo has now broken support of the 200 EMA. Historically, a breaking of the 200 EMA and a trend below the 200 EMA. This is the 200 right here, right? 200 EMA. This is a very bullish event, right? Because a very bearish event. Typically, you want to see support being maintained here, and then a breaking of this 200 EMA is a very bearish signal, right? And you can see here that the sell volume is starting to pick up on the 1 day as we trend downward. Keep in mind, this is not Neo USD. This is Neo Bitcoin, right? So what does that mean? What is the implication of this, right? The implication is that if the price trend of so let's do some math real quick. So if the price trend is Neo Bitcoin, right? And we see Bitcoin USD go down, right? But the trend equals down. Then if Bitcoin USD goes down, that means Neo USD falls at a faster rate than Bitcoin. So if we look at this like a vector, right? If Bitcoin falls this far, NEO falls this far. And that's because of this governing ratio trend, right? So we see how a lot of things that are about to happen in the next few weeks that could send us into, and you know, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, no pun intended, the bearer of bad news, if you will. This could be a crypto-wide recession, a crypto market-wide recession. Personally, I'm not looking to touch alts for a while. Until I see them leveling off, finding historic support, I'm not touching alts. The only thing I'm looking to do is I'm looking to short them. I'm going to be shorting everything. You know, take that for what it's worth. I think a couple of the alts will see an uptrend, but for the most part, not so much. And in fact, if we go to, let's go to talking back on the Smith distribution phase, crypto market cap. If we go to this neat website, the cryptocurrency market capitalization, you know, they keep a market cap. If you don't know what this is, they keep a market cap of all the different coins. And if you go to the Bitcoin dominance one, you can see market capitalization of all the coins sans Bitcoin, right? So we see this phase, something like that. So we see that the altcoins, right? If we're talking about all the coins excluding Bitcoin, this means that that's all alts, right? They had a very good year, right? Like they had a very good year. However, this again looks like a Schmidt distribution phase. So we see the last point of supply here, last point of supply. We see the buying climax. We see the automatic reaction. We see the secondary test. We see the sign of weakness. We see the up thrust. We see the second sign of weakness. And now we're in the last point of supply. So we're in a very precarious situation where, so Bitcoin's poised for a macro correction, you know. And not only that, but the altcoin market cap is being squeezed, and the capital is being put into Bitcoin. So we could very well see, based on the trends that we've seen over like Neo Bitcoin, ETH Bitcoin, these are all showing a bearish trend with its relationship to Bitcoin. This could very well send the alts down here, right? So we could see, paired with Bitcoin, an altcoin corrective phase, you know. I don't know, we're in a very interesting situation, and I think it's good to be prepared for everything. What altcoin is this? This is market cap of every altcoin. So every coin except Bitcoin. So if you combine the market capital of every single coin except Bitcoin, this is what you get. Okay. What are your thoughts on the fork and how hash power has been positioned to take out blah blah? Okay, so this is a question from Twitch. He's asking me what are my thoughts on the hashing power. To be honest with you, I'm not a developer. I'm not in a position to accurately give an opinion about the actual tech behind the hard forks. That's not something that I feel comfortable answering. So I would have to defer you to someone else who actually knows what they're talking about, because I'm not that guy. Okay, so questions from my Discord community. So here are a couple questions from them. So he says, I have a legit question for the stream. Does OMG possibly follow the same parabolic pattern of distribution and accumulation? Let's look at it. So let's look at, I'm assuming you mean OMG USD. So we would need to, so because, is there a market that has, let's look at Bittrex, is that what I'm looking at? We're gonna have to look at a smaller time scale because it's so new. So maybe even 240. So the question is, does OMG follow the parabolic distribution and accumulation phase? I haven't actually thought about it, to be honest with you. It doesn't look like it. I mean, we see a lot of accumulation down here, right? So if we're looking at OMG USD, we see a lot of accumulation down here, a lot of buying, which if we're looking at in terms of like support levels, do I have that on here? No, I don't have that on here. If we looked at like volumetric support, this is a very strong level of support, which is why we're just chilling here. And you could tell because it's just like that's where the majority of the volume was purchased, was here, right? So there's a very strong support level. And on my last stream that I talked about OMG maybe being in a good position to buy. Just because of how it's poised in the market and it's in this kind of like descending triangle. To be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about this accumulation phase because OMG is so new. I don't know that I can spot anything that matches this accumulation distribution phase. I don't know. I'll have to think about that some more. Okay. Another question is, what if you're not leveraged? How does the trading strategy change then? So if you're not leveraged, okay, so the implication is that, so if you're leveraged, you can get margin called and liquidated, right? And your losses, basically the trading strategy for being leveraged and unleveraged is the same. However, when you're leveraged, everything is accelerated, right? So say you're leveraging 5x, right? That means that you approach your losses 5 times faster than you do if you're non-leveraged. So if you open a position non-leveraged to go Bitcoin long right now, you'd have 5 times the amount of time to reach the same amount of losses as if you were leveraged. That's how you need to think about it. Another death cross on OMG. Yeah. This is a death cross right here on the, on the 6 hour and the 12 hour, I believe. Nope, not yet. 6 hour. Yes, we see a death cross on OMG. And if we look at OMG Bitcoin, I would imagine it's the same thing. Yeah. Horrible death cross here. That's why it's been eating a big pile of shit lately. You know, crazy death cross here. What is the prediction for Litecoin? Yeah, we should probably look at Litecoin, huh? Litecoin. So Litecoin's in an interesting phase as well because let's get rid of you. And to be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about Litecoin right now. Litecoin just seems to me like it was a pump and dumped that never dumped. It was a pump and dump that that pumped, and then it just never actually corrected. So man, I'm so iffy on going long Litecoin. So if you look at the 6 hour, Yeah, I don't know. Let's look at it in relation to Litecoin, Bitcoin. So on the 1 day, we have a death cross, which does not bode well for Litecoin in the event that Bitcoin corrects. Okay, so first and foremost, this doesn't look good. Right now, I'm just going to go ahead and paint a wide sweeping statement in that if you're trading an altcoin and it's currently, and its Bitcoin pair is at a death cross, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole unless you're looking to short it. Its relationship to Bitcoin is showing that when Bitcoin goes down, it goes down faster. That's what this means. That's what this death cross means on the 1 day. Okay, this guy wants to look at Bcash. Oh wait, what is it? BT. Am I an idiot? What is Bitcoin? Oh, BCH. Jesus Christ. Okay. Let's look at BCH with its relationship to Bitcoin. We'll have to look at We'll have to look at a smaller time scale, because it's so new. So this is interesting. I haven't even looked at this, but I can already tell this is gonna be interesting. So we had a death cross. So this is, again, keep in mind this is 6 hour. We had a death cross here. Death. That's a skull and crossbones. Death cross here. And now it's looking pretty bullish, because we have the slope. So 200 EMA. Slope is approaching 0. Right? And now we have a positive slope on the 50 EMA. Positive slope on the 50 EMA, which, one can reason, since the current trend is above the 200 EMA, the 50 EMA is sloping upward. We might be seeing, some sort, if we just kind of extrapolate this trend, might be seeing a golden cross right on here in the next few days. Could be good. Considering Bitcoin is poised for a correction. So Bitcoin Cash could be a good hedge during a potential Bitcoin correction. Let's look at BCH USD and see what the trend is there. Okay, so nice. So we see a golden cross on the USD pair. So Bitcoin Cash USD right here, 6 hour candles. And we see, not only do we see a nice flood of volume here, we see a golden cross on the 200 and 50 intersection here, right here. So this is looking hella bullish for Bitcoin Cash here. The only thing that sketches me out about it is the politics behind it. I don't really know the details of it, but I just know that, like, from what I've seen is that people that are Bitcoin Cash maximalists have been mining Bitcoin, right? Selling the Bitcoin to pump Bitcoin Cash up. I mean, and look at this volume here, like that in no way surprises me, right in here. My opinion is I don't really give a shit either way. I'm trading it. I don't really have time to get invested in the politics of it. This is just what I see. Okay. So a question from YouTube. You said when Bitcoin goes down, it goes down faster, but that death cross happened when Bitcoin went up. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Do you think the alts will have a similar market as to what happened during the previous Bitcoin fork? Alts have a huge rally. I think ETH will go up. I don't know. ETH's Eth's bullish push was very short-lived. I think that injection of capital into Ether after the last hard fork was basically just a band-aid for a bullet wound. You know, it's like slowly bleeding out still. I mean, we can look at it. What the hell's going on? My trading view is messing up. Sometimes it messes up when I stream. Come on, you can do it, little guy. Are you gonna load? Sorry, guys. Trading view is being a huge piece of shit. Is this real life right now? What the hell's going on? What is going? I mean, I guess we'll just sit here and play the waiting game until this shit decides to work. Oh, okay. Here we go. What window are we in? This one? Dude, I'm like about to lose my mind right now. Why is this not? Is TradingView messing up for anyone else right now? Or is it just my computer freaking out? There we go. Jesus. Okay. So I have ETHUSD pulled up. Let's get rid of Bollinger Bands here. Let's get rid of Bollinger Bands, and let's look at Ether USD on the 1 day. So there's been this macro trend, and depending on who you talk to, like, you can draw it a couple different ways. You know, I think Josh has it drawn like this, which is fine, no big deal. You know, you can draw it like this, whatever. But let's go ahead and put this volume up here and merge up. And we can see here that there's this on the 1 day, right? We're coming at an impasse here because the 200 EMA is starting to slope out, is heading toward flat. The 50 EMA has long since been flat, and so this lower line of support is lining up with the 200 EMA here. Oop. 200 EMA there. So if we see a breaking of this trend line / this EMA, doesn't look good for Ether right now. It could be bad. A lot of people are saying that this is a potential like bear pennant. I'm sorry, bull pennant, bull flag, bullish event. I'm not inclined to agree with that thesis, just simply because I don't see really solid volume consolidation throughout this thing. Typically, you know, what you want to see is something like, you know, price consolidation between 70 to 90% of the move, and that's not what we're seeing here. You know, it's more or less like flat volume throughout the whole thing. Typically what you want to see is volume consolidation like in a downward fashion throughout the length of this thing in here, and we're not really seeing that. So, you know, I'm not inclined to agree with this bullish continuation thesis, especially considering the ratio is sitting at a very precarious situation with Bitcoin. So Ether, Bitcoin. Let's go back to that again. You know, we're on the 1 day. We have this death cross here. So if we're comparing these two charts, right? Right here and right here. If Bitcoin decides to have its little correction party, its little correction erection, and it pulls back, that's going to do nothing but pull Ether back as well, which is going to inevitably have us testing, you know, this trend line again. And a breaking of this trend line is going to be a very bearish event. So I would be leaning more bullish. I would be leaning more toward a bullish continuation pattern if, you know, I would be inclined to agree with this bullish continuation pattern if I was seeing something like maybe, so this is Ether Bitcoin. If, you know, we were seeing something like the trend was starting to slope out, maybe find a bottom, you know, maybe the 200 or the 50 EMA is starting to, the slope is starting to approach zero, but we're not seeing that. You know, we're just seeing sustained downward slope. We're seeing the price continue to go down. We're seeing the volume continue to remain constant. So, you know, in the event that Bitcoin, the only reason why Ether's up right now is, you know, because of that, in my opinion, it's because of that, the DevCon hype. People were expecting some, there were some funny memes out there where people were expecting, you know, to see another EEA pump, you know, something like this, or something like this, and DevCon's just gone flat. It's actually gone down in price. So, you know, keep an eye out for this. You know, not to be Mr. Doom and Gloom, but if Bitcoin corrects, then I'm expecting the majority of coins to correct as well. Okay. All right. Any more questions about this stuff? Because if not, I'm going to go eat some lunch because I think you guys can hear my stomach growling in the stream, which is not a good look. So, you guys have any questions before we wrap this thing up? Can I look at ARC Bitcoin? Sure. ARC Bitcoin. Whoa, the hell? Literally never looked at an ARC Bitcoin chart before. Let's look at the 6 hour count. Okay, so 6 hour, same story. Death cross here. What does the 12 hour look like? 12 hour death cross. So ARC's not looking too hot right now. Not looking too good. And it looks like it's making a little bear flag right now too. Oh, maybe not. Was that an illusion? Might be making a little double bottom here. What do the Bollinger Bands say? Let's see, 20 minute. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, this doesn't look like a legit double bottom, it just kind of looks like noise. But yeah, if it's showing up on the 12 hours, you have 12 hour death cross, a 6 hour death cross, it's all looking bearish from here. Slopes heading downward, price is heading downward. You know, volume is increasing on the way down. We see it here. You know, volume is increasing here, which means a sustained move is likely. You know, it's not doing any crazy moves where it's like busting through the Bollinger Bands. I mean, it's busting through the Bollinger Bands, but it's not aggressive. You know, it's just kind of, it's busting through and then going back in and resuming the downtrend. So ARC Bitcoin doesn't look very good. Where do you think Bitcoin and alts will be in a year from now? I literally have no idea. That is an impossible question to answer. Can you, okay, so here's a question from YouTube. So the only alt without a death cross is Bitcoin Cash. It's not the only alt, but it's the only one that I've found in the stream. So someone's asking me to cover Bollinger Band strategy, and I would love to. It's been the point of focus for me for a good bit now. Let's go ahead and put it in context with Bitcoin, though. Oh, God, is my trading view messing up again? Okay. Come on, come on, come on, come on. You can do it. You can do it, baby girl. Come on. You can do it. Okay. Let's look at the 240 minute, aka the 4 minute, the 4 hour Bollinger Bands. And okay, so actually let's look at the 120 minute. So let's go ahead and talk some strategy real quick. So let's try to find, I'm going to try to find an example for you guys. I think on the 12 hour there's a good example if I remember correctly. Okay, so part of the Bollinger Band strategy is that it is, okay, so the nice thing about trading Bollinger Bands is that they work on a relative basis, not an absolute basis. So if you think about, should I move this down? Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll just go beep. Okay, so Bollinger Band strategy is starting to blow my mind now, because like the amount of market insight you can gain from just Bollinger Band indicators. I'll go ahead and pull this up so you can see what indicators I'm showing. Ugh. I think I need to restart Chrome, but if I do that, it's gonna fuck up the stream, so I'm not gonna do that. So the two basic indicators you want to use in conjunction with the Bollinger Band is going to be %B and Bollinger Band width. So starting from bottom to top, the Bollinger Band width literally just tells you the distance of the Bollinger Band, the width of the Bollinger Band. So you can see here, as we see the squeeze here, the Bollinger Band width is low, and as we see the bulge here, the Bollinger Band width is high. Right, easy enough. And similarly, the Bollinger, the %B just tells you where the price is in relation to the Bollinger Band, the upper and lower Bollinger Band. So if we look here, we see a close below the Bollinger Bands, and then of course we see the oscillator outside the, this is the Bollinger Band, right? That's outside the Bollinger Band. And so every time we see a close outside the Bollinger Band, we see it outside here. And likewise, every time we see a close above, we see a close above here. Okay. So these two indicators just give you a visualization of what's happening within the context of the price inside the Bollinger Bands and outside the Bollinger Bands. So one of the really great setups you can see with Bollinger Bands is that you can start to see divergence of an uptrend or a downtrend, and there are some really great setups that maybe you don't see if you're not using Bollinger Bands. And here's one right here. So a lot of people don't see that this is a double top, for example. Traditionally, when you see a double top, you see a price go up, it reaches the neckline, it goes up again, you know, it reaches the top within like 1 to 3% of price, and then it goes down, and it continues downward with a specific price target. However, with Bollinger Bands, how they're defined is first you see a breaking of the Bollinger Bands, right? So this is, I'm going to show you a double top here. So you see a breaking of the Bollinger Bands here, which has us here, right? So we see a relative high compared to the Bollinger Bands here, and then we see an absolute high in price, but a relative low in Bollinger Bands here, which this gives us a really great setup for a double top or a short, right? So right in here, we see a double top setup, which has us ultimately reversing here. And same thing right here, we see a peaking of the Bollinger Bands right here, an absolute high but relative low in the Bollinger Bands, and the price pulls back. And we can see this over and over again on bottoms, on tops. See if I can find a double bottom in here. Here's a great double bottom right here. So if we were looking at this setup right here, we wouldn't necessarily see this as a double bottom setup in a traditional sense, right? Because typically double bottoms, we want to see something like this, where it's like within 1 to 3%. A really strong double bottom would have the first peak lower than the second peak. But here, this is a very clean double bottom setup here, where we see a relative low to the Bollinger Bands here, and then an absolute low, but a not relative low here, which gives us a nice setup for a run to the top of the Bollinger Bands here. Right? Let's see if we can find another setup. We can go through this all day because they're consistent. They're very, very consistent, and they work on all time scales. So the question I've been getting a lot lately, since I've been diving into this, is what is the price target? What is the PT for Bollinger Band setups? Well, it's really simple, honestly. It's not as simple as saying, like, you know, if you have a double top in a traditional sense, it's going to be the distance from here projected downward. That's how you traditionally calculate double tops and double bottoms. The way it's set up here is that if you see a double top, the price target is going to be a trip, as John Bollinger says this, it's a trip to, so if you see a double top, it's going to be a trip to the lower bands, right? So we see a double top here. So we see a peaking of the bands. We see an absolute high, but a not relative high here. And then the next candle sends us down to a trip to the lower Bollinger Bands there, right? And likewise, if we go back to our previous example of the double top here, we see another double top, right? A peaking of the bands, a not peaking of the bands, a relative high to the bands, an absolute high in price, and it goes to the lower Bollinger Bands here. Let's see if we can find another example. Here's the double bottom we just talked about right here. So we see a relative low right here, an absolute low here, and then it goes up to the upper Bollinger Bands there. And of course, you can imagine if we're on something like a 12-hour, you have a bigger swing. If you're on a 1 day, you see a bigger swing. If we're on 120-minute candles, we see a smaller swing. You know, it's all relative to the price view that you're looking at, which puts us in an interesting situation here. Because right now, if we're looking at the 120-minute view, the 2-hour candles, that's what we're seeing right here, right? So we see a close above the Bollinger Bands, a close inside the Bollinger Bands. So we might be seeing a little bit of pullback on the 2-hour scale, which has us, you know, maybe around here, retesting 7K or something like that before continuing upward. So something to keep an eye on. Doesn't MACD show the same divergence? MACD shows a type of, it does show divergence, but it's on an absolute basis and not on a volatility basis. Well, actually, that's not true because it tracks it with in relation to a couple moving averages. So that's not true. You know, Bollinger Bands are just a different. You can use MACD to track divergence. We can also use Bollinger Bands. It's just a different tool. That's all. It's just a different tool, and it just depends on how you like to trade the market. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I've been talking for like an hour and a half, and my brain is fried, and I need some water because my throat is dry. Okay, so yeah, thanks for watching the stream. If you're interested in getting more information, or you know you like my analysis and all that stuff, you know, check out my website. It's just bitcoinschmittcoin.com. There's a link to it in the description below. If you'd like to get access to my trading community, where you know me and my fellow traders are discussing and bouncing ideas off each other and talking about trade setups, all that good stuff, you know, you can find that below at my website. And yeah, it's just a little consolidated news source. And I'll, if you don't feel like joining the community, that's totally fine. You can just drop a like on the video and share it with your friends. Whatever you want to do, or you can not do anything. That's totally fine too. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Hopefully, the next time we talk, we'll have reached this upper band or this upper envelope, and we'll have something interesting to talk about again. Okay. Anyway, have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you guys later.